Okay, I think numbers are starting to slow down, so we'll go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone and happy Tuesday to all. Certainly hope everyone's having a great week and appreciate you all taking the time to join us today for our last part of our Extreme Heat Adaptation in Indigenous Communities webinar series. Just to introduce myself really quickly, my name is Lauren Halili. I'm a coordinator supporting both CNNCTS and CJ who are hosting this event today. And I also want to give some acknowledgement to our other partners that are listed here on the screen, including Great Basin Tribal Alliance, Institute for Tribal Environmental Professionals, Climate Science Alliance, and Public Health Alliance of Southern California, who really helped make this webinar series possible. And yeah, we're just super excited to kind of cap this series off and look forward to future topics that we might do with this format. So moving right along, I'm just going to go over a quick agenda really briefly today. So I'll be passing it off to Paige Dawson here in a bit to give an introduction to who CJ is as an organization and what we sort of do and how we're sort of intertwined with CNNCTS. And then we're going to go ahead and go into the start of our panelist presentations, followed by Q&A. I have breakout rooms on the agenda today. We may or may not get to this. We've had this on the agenda the past 2 times. Weren't able to get around it, which is totally fine. We have a great lineup of panelists, presenters today, and so we really want to prioritize those and create a space and opportunity for you all to be able to ask questions and interact with our panelists today. So that is sort of a TBD on the agenda. But lastly, we'll also share out some really great resources and close out our event from there. And so moving on, right on into the event, I'll pass it off to Paige.
Hello, everyone. My name is Paige Dawson, and I'm the program manager at CJ, working closely with the Collaborative of Native Nations for Climate Transformation and Stewardship, or CNNCTS. And just, yeah, like Lauren said, I'm going to give you a quick introduction to CJ. CJ is a technical assistance center based at San Diego State University, and we support entities such as community-based organizations, tribes and tribal organizations, governments and municipalities. We were formerly funded by a grant from the Environmental Protection Agency, but right now CJ is working to secure additional funding to support our full technical assistance menu, which included services related to brownfields, environmental health and quality, and sustainable energy. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, in the meantime, while we do focus on securing additional funding, the technical assistance that's currently available is going to be related to grant support. So that includes services such as grant identification, grant writing training, templates and checklists, one-on-one advising, grant proposal review, and then guidance on grant management and administration. So we do have our contact info up here on the slide. We'll also put in the chat, but if you're looking for grant support, please feel free to reach out and we can provide that guidance and answer questions. And just know that Lauren and I are here on the team to provide that support. So with that, I will pass it off to Sergio to introduce CNNCTS.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sergio Morales. I am the program coordinator for the Collaborative of Native Nations for Climate Transformation and Stewardship, aka CNNCTS. Our goal at CNNCTS is to advance a model of Indigenous-led land stewardship as a key approach to how we envision climate adaptation and resilience. We work with tribal communities, tribal serving nonprofit organizations, and universities across Southern California. Through that, we combine traditional ecological knowledge along with Western science to support projects that address coastal resilience, cultural and prescribed fire, climate restoration, and land rematriation. Through this, we can ensure that community priorities are always at the center of what we do. Next slide, please. So we're able to get to do all of this through our network, which is really at the heart of CNNCTS. It includes 4 tribal governments, 4 universities, and 7 tribal serving nonprofit organizations, as well as some federal partners, which allow us to create code stewardship opportunities on public lands. Like I said, what's important though is to highlight that this work is only possible because of the relationships behind it, partnerships that have been built and fostered over years of working together. CNNCTS is about growing that network, building capacity, and supporting tribal communities. while also creating that space for community members, students, and researchers to get involved in Indigenous-led climate work. So if you'd like to learn more, please definitely do not hesitate to check out our website for some project blogs, great pictures. Sign up for our newsletter. You're always going to get, again, more information about our blogs and some of the things happening within Connects in our network. And definitely check out our Instagram. Then I'll pass it over to Lauren.
Thank you, Sergio. I'll take over from here. So this is the last installment of our three-part Extreme Heat Adaptation in Indigenous Communities series. The previous two installments focused first on household level solutions and then community level solutions. And then today we'll be focusing on regional level solutions. So we'll be sharing links and QR codes to the recordings and resource handouts from the two previous installments at the end of today's presentation. And then, yeah, moving on. So to give a quick recap of our last installment, which was focused on community level solutions, we were lucky to have 4 great panelists join us, starting with David Almanza. He's a postdoctoral researcher at the Desert Research Institute and spoke about reframing heat through cultural and community-based approaches that center traditional ecological knowledge, lived experience, and local leadership. Next, Heather Lafferty, who is the Chief Resilience Officer and State Hazard Mitigation Officer at the Nevada Department of Emergency Management Services and Homeland Security, shared actionable community-based strategies rooted in culturally responsive planning, ranging from off-grid infrastructure to food sovereignty, tribal health support, and regional data sharing. And then finally, Catherine Foster and Kelly Meza Prado, both of whom serve as Senior Adaptation and Resilience Planners at the California Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation, highlighted tools like Cal Heat Score, along with the state's Extreme Heat and Community Resilience Grant Program, which is expected to reopen in September 2025, so we'll have more information on that later. But you can watch the recording of this installment by scanning that QR code on the top right-hand corner of the screen, but we will also be including the links in the chat at the end of the session. Next slide. Okay, so next we're going to be moving to the panel presentations and discussion part of this session. Next slide. And with that, I would like to introduce everyone to Ariel Chenard. She's the lead at the Nevada Heat Lab. So Ariel, if you want to start by introducing yourself and get us started, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm really excited to give you all some kind of regional context around extreme heat. And let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Is everybody seeing my slide? Awesome, great, thank you. And then I need the controls in front of me. Great, so I'm the lead for the Nevada Heat Lab. We are housed at DRI, and we are part of the California Nevada Applications Program, which is a NOAA-funded project through the Climate Adaptation Partnership Program. And we are housed in the Climate Center group at the Desert Research Institute. So Dr. Tamara Wall is my PI. My team also consists of Dr. Tom Albright, who's at UNR in Reno, Emma Bloomfield here at UNLV in Las Vegas, Dr. David Almanza, Kyan Engel, and myself. So we focus on heat adaptation and resilience strategies. And to do that, we try to leverage local knowledge to develop and promote implementable heat adaptation approaches. So this project originally started as the Southern Nevada Heat Resilience Lab. But as our work has grown, we've made great partnerships up in Washoe County in the Reno-Sparks area. And we just recognize that although Southern Nevada is particularly hot, heat is an issue for all of Nevada. Prior to the existence of this project, there was no one space that owned heat. So this project was created to provide a coordinating and collaborative space for all the different practitioners who work on heat, and also a space to elevate the needs of our communities that are most impacted by heat. So why heat resilience? So heat is the deadliest natural hazard here in Southern Nevada, across the state, across the nation, and across the world. Last summer, we had 526 heat-related deaths here in Clark County. Unfortunately, that is a lagging indicator, so it does take time for the coroner's office to process through cases that are heat related. And many of the heat related deaths need to go through with like a medical coding process, which can also take some time. So we generally don't know the number of lives lost over summer until, let's see, we didn't know the final tally for last summer until I think January or February of this year. Summer 2024 was absolutely the hottest summer on record, not just for Southern Nevada, but for the Southwest in general. We don't, so far, summer 2025 hasn't been as intense, but it's not over yet. When we look at climate projections, we are looking at about 20 to 18 days in Southern Nevada above 105. But just for some comparison, 2023 had 25 days above 105. And then by 2055, we're looking at 46 to 32 days over 105. Summer 2024 blew through all of those projections, which doesn't mean that the projections were wrong. It's just that an outlier year is always possible within any given trend. We did set a record high last summer on July 7th. Las Vegas reached 120 degrees. And I think the severity of last summer really helped folks here to recognize what a threat heat is, not just when it's super, super hot, but across an entire summer. So what I always say is that here in Southern Nevada and across Nevada itself, everyone is exposed to heat. And heat can act as a chronic stressor or an acute shock, depending on the length and the severity of an extreme heat event. So it's hot all summer, right? That is a chronic stressor for so many people living in our communities. You know, that week around July 7th last year, where we were over 118, 119, we're at 120 degrees. That's more in the realm of an acute shock. So heat complicates other existing problems. I always say that heat is a systemic issue. So when you talk about heat, you end up talking about things like infrastructure, wildfires, drought. What else do we talk about? Access to affordable housing, workforce health, shade disparities, economic inequality. When you talk about heat, you end up talking about so many other things. And here in particular, so this image on this slide is from the Southern Nevada Extreme Heat Vulnerability Analysis that was done by our Regional Transportation Commission in 2021, which shows where people are most exposed and most vulnerable to extreme heat. And we have folks who are heat vulnerable, whether it's due to health disparities, and heat burdened, which means that their households make really difficult trade-offs when it gets really hot. And Las Vegas also has one of the worst urban heat island effects in the nation. So just a real quick primer on the urban heat island effect. It's basically what happens when the built environment traps and retains heat. And that's due to a lot of impervious surfaces, so like blacktop, concrete, buildings, and shade disparities, so lack of tree canopy or built shade structures in neighborhoods. And what we found here in Las Vegas when we did the Urban Heat Island Mapping Campaign with NIHIS, Kappa Strategies, and RTC back in 2022 is that our hottest neighborhoods are 11 degrees hotter than our coolest neighborhoods. And imagine what that means on a day that is 120 degrees. So what do we do? So the Nevada Heat Lab started in summer 2023, and I started putting together a heat working group. It started with around 8 founding members and has now grown, this is slightly out of date, but is now around 100 members. So those are all folks in Southern Nevada and now in Washoe County that get together for heat response calls. So when the National Weather Service issues an extreme heat warning, we do our best to activate that group and get on a call, all of us together, to share information, resources, talk through challenges that we're all facing. We also try to do after action calls. So after that extreme heat event is over, We give everybody a few days to attempt to recover. And then we get back on a call and discuss what happened and what could go better next time. So we open that collaborating and resource sharing space, and this helps us to prioritize actions and move resources around communities as they're most needed. Primarily, though, we are researchers that provide high quality information for our decision makers and stakeholders. We do high level community engagement with both practitioners, so folks who work on extreme heat in one way or the other, and the communities most impacted by heat, to co-create resilient strategies, mitigation strategies, and adaptation. We are the subject matter experts on heat impacts, responses, resources, and more. We are also doing data collection and coordination around urban tree canopy expansion efforts. And one of our challenges is that we can only access some forms of funding. But here's what we don't do. We don't do emergency response, and we don't do policy. We don't create it, and we don't comment on it. You'll see that I have heat response in red. So we are still holding those heat response calls, which makes us like kind of quasi emergency response because we're opening that space when heat is most impactful, which has been a really challenging thing to do because we don't necessarily have the skill set of emergency responders because we're researchers. So I want to talk a little bit about what does and doesn't happen in Southern Nevada. I'm learning more about the state as a whole, but I can speak with great accuracy to Southern Nevada, so that is what I will do. So when the National Weather Service issues an extreme heat warning, our cooling centers activate. Our cooling centers are our only official response to extreme heat here in Clark County. And they only activate as cooling centers when the National Weather Service has issued an extreme heat warning. There is increased homeless outreach. So there are teams that go out into our unhoused populations, help them find resources. Some of you may be aware that we have folks who live in the stormwater tunnels under town when it gets really hot in the summer. Unfortunately, summer heat also coincides with our flash flood season. So there are outreach teams that go into the tunnels to let folks know that, there's storms coming in, or in the next couple of days, we're going to get rain, help them find resources. And then some of our partners have access to low cost or free bus passes that they can give away to help people get to free cooled spaces like cooling centers. But what doesn't happen is a codified, actionable, coordinated emergency-ish response. And I say emergency-ish because extreme heat is not officially recognized as an emergency by the Stafford Act or FEMA. So that means places like Southern Nevada who do experience extreme temperatures are very limited in what sort of funding they can access to be better prepared. We do not have a funded cooling center response that includes 24-hour cooling shelters, extended and weekend hours, or co-located resources. We do not have expanded or targeted heat warnings. So when I mentioned that we have neighborhoods that are 11 degrees hotter than our coolest neighborhoods, it means that people are already experiencing extreme heat under the guidelines of the National Weather Service before the National Weather Service ever issues a warning. We also don't have like heat health messaging or heat warning messaging that is regionally and culturally relevant in multiple languages. And we also need expanded heat health information that addresses substance use. We do not have mobile or temporary cooling centers. So other places will utilize different vehicles or structures to get cooling where it is most needed. We do not have supply distribution to local community-based organizations, whether that's bottled water or UV umbrellas. We don't have anything kind of approaching a heat relief network, which I will get into more detail on later. There's very limited support for folks with disabilities when it's extremely hot out. There's no sort of targeted neighborhood outreach. I know that Portland used their CERTS, which is a community emergency response team, to get people temporary cooling during their heat wave. And that could be like a mobile heat pump or a window AC unit. We don't do well-being checks, and we don't have any 311 call registration. And also, you know, we don't have easily accessed temporary funds for households when it's extremely hot. And we do know that folks make really tough trade-offs when it's hot. There are households and families and individuals here in Southern Nevada who choose between cooling their home to a safe and livable temperature or putting food on the table or getting their medications. We don't necessarily acknowledge here in Southern Nevada that grid disruptions are a possibility. We have very limited data collection during the summer. We do not engage regularly in pre-season heat readiness exercises, and there are no clearly identified targets or goals for harm reduction. I feel like I've said a lot of really negative things, but I do want to finish up this slide and mention that we don't have backup power at cooling centers here in Southern Nevada. So the one resource that we point folks to on a regular basis during the summer would not exist in the event of a power failure. And we also don't have heat respite centers that allow for sleep and rest. Heat is a physically exhausting experience. Folks who are unhoused often access cooling resources like the cooling stations, but they cannot lay down or sleep there, which is a huge challenge because your body literally has to have that rest when it's really hot. And also, you know, just on a project level, we are NOAA funded, and NOAA funding is very uncertain right now. So that's another challenge as well. So I want to talk through cooling centers in Southern Nevada. We have about 37 cooling centers for Clark County and surrounding areas. And these are places like libraries, rec centers, community centers. These are not activated all summer. Like I said, they only activate during an extreme heat alert. But when they're activated, not a whole lot changes in those spaces. When they're activated, you may be able to walk in and get a cold bottle of water, but depending on what type of facility you're accessing for a cooling resource, for example, at a rec center, it may be just some extra chairs in the lobby or an empty classroom with some chairs at a community center. Libraries seem to be more popular because people can access free Wi-Fi, they can read books, they can be there for extended amounts of time and find things to do. They're generally more appealing spaces. But all these spaces offer limited hours. So there's no overnight support and there's limited weekend support and holiday support. So this basically means that if you are going to your library for some cooling and that library closes at 6 p.m., well, your cooling resource is then gone at 6 p.m., even though it's, you know, maybe still 115 degrees out. I do compare us to Phoenix every so often. I know we're Nevada, we're different, and I understand that. But one of the things that Phoenix has, which I think is pretty exemplary, is a heat relief network. So they have different tiers of cooling services, some that are 24-hour locations that allow people to sleep and shower, others that simply offer hydration, others that are more traditional sort of cooling stations like libraries and things like that. But they are widely distributed throughout that metro area. And I think last summer they had over 38,000 visitors participating in their heat relief network. We do a lot of media coverage, so you can read about it if you want. But there are still a whole lot of next steps and outstanding questions around extreme heat in Southern Nevada. We're getting a better idea of how heat impacts morbidity and mortality, but we haven't really quantified the economic impact of heat here in Southern Nevada or across the state. And heat definitely has an impact on our workforce health, on small businesses, on healthcare costs, all sorts of things. So that's something we are hoping to get a better idea of. Also, we'd like a clearer picture of heat health impacts. So doing something like an excess deaths study that looks beyond just the cases, the deaths that are clearly attributable to heat, but looking at the impact that heat has on other types of chronic illness and hospital visits and resulting morbidity and mortality. Right now, we are undertaking a cooling center usage study. Dr. David Almanza, who spoke to the group last time, he is spearheading that effort for us this summer, and we are gathering data at cooling stations to better understand how this resource is functioning for folks in the community and what their experience of cooling stations is. We are preparing for and now responding to summer 2025, and also working to get a better understanding of heat impacts in rural and tribal communities. I think I'm going to end it there because I know I tend to go a little long, and I'm not sure if we're doing questions in between presenters or at the end, but I just wanted to say, I wanted to say one more thing before I switch slides. One of our biggest challenges around addressing heat in Nevada, in Southern Nevada in particular, is that we don't have heat health governance. So, earlier in the presentation, I pointed out that my project doesn't do policy. We don't do that. We can inform policy, we can share out best practices, but we don't do policy. And that is very contrasted to other places like, I'll use Arizona as an example again. For example, the city of Phoenix has a chief heat officer who helps to coordinate, gather data, do all sorts of things, anything heat related in the city of Phoenix. And then there's somebody on the Maricopa County level who supports that role, and eventually somebody at the state of Arizona level who supports heat work across the state. So one of our challenges is how to make change, how to create the conditions for accountability in our partners when we don't have any sort of heat governance structure. And with that, I will say thank you so much. I will defer to the folks who are running this to see if we're doing questions now or later, but I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ariel. We appreciate you joining us and sharing the information on the work of the Nevada Heat Lab and specific context when it comes to extreme heat in Southern Nevada. Just wanted to make a quick note. You can please feel free to put your questions in the chat as we go through the panelist presentations, and we'll have space to address these questions during the Q&A session at the end. But with that being said, moving forward, we're going to be hearing from two folks at the Nevada Department of Emergency Management, Homeland Security, Kimberly Palma-Ortega and Aaron Thacker. So Kimberly and Aaron, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Aaron Thacker. Can you guys all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Yes, myself and Kimberly Palma-Ortega will be doing a presentation today. I am the tribal coordinator for the Office of Emergency Management here in Nevada. And today we're going to be talking about the extreme heat in Indigenous communities and regional solutions. You're going to go to the next slide. So it's the tribal landscape in Nevada. And then these are the current heat issues in the region. There's 28 federally recognized tribes within Nevada, spreading across 3 different regions. Heat mapping data from summer 2024 reveals portions of Reno Sparks remained 20 degrees hotter in mid-afternoon compared to cooler locations on the nearby Sierra slopes. Another issue is tribal infrastructure, and residents here face high heat exposure, especially during long summer nights. And then the last one is Fort Mojave has been exposed to record-breaking heat, which is greater than 120 to 125 in recent years, with life-threatening conditions like heat stroke among the elders. And Kimberly?
Okay, with that, thank you guys for having us. But my name again is Kimberly Palma-Ortega, and with this slide, we went ahead and just try to nugget down a couple of the tribes that are most impacted with the extreme heat and their vulnerability. So, for example, we have the Reno Sparks Indian Colony. Some of their factors, that make them vulnerable are, paved surfaces, limited green infrastructure, and usually they're 23 degrees hotter than other regions. Some of the other tribal issues along the lines of that too is that there is not a lot of places for them to get cooling resources. As we know, Nevada is mainly rural and frontier outside of our 2 main populated urban areas, which is Washoe County and Clark County. With that, just some of our Southern Nevada tribes, as it was mentioned by Ariel, that we reached a record high of 120 last year. So that not only makes it impacts for our individuals living within the community, but also our vegetation, state agriculture, and livestock that we've currently got down here in the south, which doesn't have that luscious green that we do in the north and Elko regions. And then some of the other components to that too is just like with Pyramid Lake, you know, they're very much a rural desert type heat with little infrastructure, and their water is very sacred, you know, scattered. So we don't have the same amount of pooling as we just mentioned with the way we see it with our urban cities. We have other ways of supplying sources, water, and things like that. So we just don't have that in a lot of our rural tribal communities. Some of the other things that, you know, just add another layer to those heat risks, you know, if we were able to invest in, you know, off-grid solar battery systems, but again, that comes at a cost. We also have, you know, safe buildings. So just navigating within our communities on those buildings that maybe are historical, but maybe don't meet certain building codes, as well as just looking and mapping out the best areas to do cooling hubs and centers. I know that at least in the South Beat, like they had mentioned, we have at least 37, but even with those, it just doesn't always navigate across all 3 regions that we currently have in Nevada, and for all the tribes to have that access as well either. Some of the other things too that we would like to, you know, hopefully help move processes forward is just prioritizing, you know, some facilities, especially if they are experiencing any fires or in power outages. This just allows us to kind of work with them and build out some possible other infrastructures to help coordinate some of those, you know, layers of need, whether that's a cooling station or just getting other valuable resources to them. Erin, I'll go ahead and take the next slide. With Region 1, where I'm housed at currently, we've got a number of tribes within Region 1. We also shared this map because sometimes it's kind of hard to decipher where a specific tribe is. And so what we did is we just wanted to make sure that this is a quick reference for others to be able to navigate when we're talking about tribes and they're looking to reach out, understanding where they're at, placed within the 3 regions. I believe we have a question. You guys let me know if we need to answer that or if you would like us to hold off.
We can wait until the Q&A session at the end.
All right, thank you so very much. With that, we've had a number of conversations with across the 3 regions. One, for example, I just had with the Paiute tribe, which I do see Harriet on here. And just some of the conversations that we've been having off record is just how we can help navigate collecting of data. I know that it was mentioned in earlier where that's what we're trying to do. And so I know that when we're having these kind of conversations, not often are we thinking about heat death, we just kind of live through it. And so maybe working through the specific public health Indian you know, clinics and centers within the tribes, we can go ahead and help collect some of that data just to aid on research, so that if we ever did need to help pull together some educational material for legislation at any time, you know, we have those components, but we also know how to build out resources within the state as well too. So Erin, I'll go ahead and let you take over.
All right, and again, we have Region 2, which is pretty much along the Sierra foothills and then a little bit into the Midwestern part of Nevada. This Region 2 contains the Falmouth Paiute Shoshone tribe, Pyramid Lake, Reno Sparks, the Timbisha, Walker River, the Arrington, and the Washoe tribe of Nevada and California. Again, as mentioned earlier, Reno Sparks Indian Colony kind of sits in the middle of Reno, very urbanized area, and as stated before, they're about 23 degrees hotter during the summer months. And then lastly, Region 3, which is Northern Nevada. Again, the Duck Valley shares a border with Oregon and Idaho, and Fort McDermott shares the border with Oregon as well. And the Confederated Tribes of Goshu share the border with Utah. And next slide.
Okay, and then with this, yes, thank you, sir. With this, we want to go over some, you know, facts and grounds, planning assumptions, and an understanding, as we were just mentioning earlier in the previous speaker as well, is just that these cooling centers and messaging may not reach everyone. So we just want to take note on developing and helping others create some heat communication plans. And what that looks like specifically for your jurisdiction, as well as translate it in whatever common languages across that region or jurisdiction is. So for example, if we're not only talking tribal language, but we're talking other language, if you're talking urban, that way we're able to get consistent messaging across the board. And then also as Aaron had mentioned, there's a number of tribes that live within the urban areas or share urban area living, but we also have tribes that have a number of locations where their members may be living, where some maybe are living on colonies, but some are living in the urban, and they may have other reservation areas where additional members may live. So just coordinating consistent messaging across the board so that we can get what one area is getting sent over to another, just in case you're using law enforcement or other means to be able to help remove and evacuate individuals for additional cooling centers, or to issue out public messaging in regards to say evacuations, or notifying them where these cooling centers are, or even just educational information. What's the best platform for them to be able? Is that text messages? Is that alerts? Is that social media? So just along those lines. Do the next one, Aaron. As well as this one right here. So this is just an extension to a previous slide, I believe number 3. And so it's just expanding on environmental, factors. What does that specific jurisdiction or region look like? I know it's, for example, in Vegas, we have a lot of housing, we have a lot of asphalt and pools and really big structures. So at night, we're not being able to cool off like we would be, like, say, for example, in Pahrump or in Nye County, when we're more desert related. So just understanding your environmental factors as well as your social infrastructure factors. We're talking about our elders and low income housing and different tribal zones that may lack air conditioning or other resources such as cooling centers or different types of agriculture and water infrastructure. Just another point to add on to that too is the cultural importance. So what does that do to discrepancies and what their everyday living, as well as if there's any public ceremonies or resource gatherings, like if we were doing back to school fairs, for example, like what does that look like compared to when should we have them? Can we move them to a different time frame? Should they be inside, outside? So just understanding overall where and how to navigate, daily community events and things. Go ahead, Aaron. All right, and then just expanding a little bit further regionally within Nevada on what extreme heat really plays the impact. For example, Southern Nevada, we are at least over the hundreds for a good chunk of about 3 months or more. For right here, just to give you the example, we were in 112 we were over 112. For a number of days within 2024. In Nevada, their average over 100 is between 12 to 31 days. And even though there's a large discrepancy in days reaching over 100, the impacts are still detrimental across the board. And then also when we're dealing with, just the different kind of heat patterns that we see throughout the tribal lands, there's some things that we can do for not seeing the benefits of resources and things like that. We can go ahead and coordinate some tribal workshops. We can navigate and realign some response plans. So Aaron and I are able to kind of help guide or direct people to the appropriate resources to help us kind of get that kind of to the point of everybody that's on this call right here. We all value these impacts. So however we're able to share resources, please let us know. But also, looking for funding requests, to help with technical assistance or mitigation projects to help align with some of these effects that we're seeing across the state. And then for this slide right here, some additional facts on the ground, as well as as I know was mentioned with Ariel's presentation, the CERT. So we do have a slide on here with a QR code that leads to our state website, which can give you some additional, depending what region you're in, some key points on who those point of contacts are, and that could be through Red Cross, that could be through CERT. So we have a number of things that we can go ahead and try to help facilitate some outreach in regards to helping support cooling stations or evacuations if you guys were to ever need that may attend to helping with the vulnerable populations that are a little bit of a higher risk. We'll go ahead, Aaron.
Right, and again, facts on the ground. Things that we want to act on is trying to work with tribal clinics to ensure that they have cold storage for medications during power outages or if there's wildfires. again, creating shared cold storage protocols amongst the tribes with resource sharing platforms, training community health aides and heat-related illness identification and response, and try to establish transportation agreements for emergency evacuation or cooling center access. And that would be with the tribes or possibly me, myself, the tribal coordinator. And then again, Nevada Office of Emergency Management has Nevada Tribal Emergency Coordinating Council, INTEC, for Unified Collaboration Quarterly. We have those meetings. We also do a monthly tribal emergency management call. That's every third Tuesday of the month. And it's just getting input from all the tribal communities here in Nevada. And we also co-host joint exercises with counties, cities, and tribal leadership here.
Okay, and then just again, some more additional facts on the ground planning assumptions when it comes to the impacts of our food systems. We need to protect the forms in which we produce our food through the sources that we use. We use a number of them, depending on where you are locally and jurisdictionally throughout the regions in our state, and our tribes. Again, to use different forms, whether or not you're rural, frontier, or in the urban. So just understanding also the different kind of control burns and water steward practices that might be also taking place throughout the whole year, not just seasonally, that we see sometimes currently. Also, develop some indoor and outdoor shading garden systems. We have an example one right here on our slide right here, but there's a number of ways that we can kind of help share some resources and information on some of the hydroponics and things like that. And then also just prioritize food plans, emergency meals, storage kits, just for heat events. That's some of the stuff that we do specifically, especially with mine, is a lot of preparedness within the tribes. So we can help work with our public health clinics, just to try to get other options, as well as link you up to other community resources. Okay. And then lastly, for one of our slides here is just, climate data might not reflect all Indigenous realities. So with everything, we're always going to miss something, no matter who's doing the surveys or the gathering of data. So we just want to make sure that when this happens, that we launch some community-based weather and heat monitoring programs, like you just heard from Ariel and a number of others throughout the different presentations over the last three series that we just had right here. So if you are seeing something and you're not notating something, you reach back out and see how we can get that on board, and that they can help gather that. Also build and adapt some climate dashboards. I know our GIS program, so that is our mapping, is working on some layers, especially within the tribes. So as soon as we finish navigating some of that, we'll go ahead and share that with everyone. But also share some data with other Indigenous nations and build up some regional awareness and advocacy. So use us to help you communicate with other tribes within our state, as well as our cross-border states, as Aaron had mentioned as well.
Right, and just some more facts on the ground. Fire and infrastructure is at risk during a likely heat event. When extreme heat and red flag warnings are in effect, in addition with dry conditions and strong winds, they create an increased risk of wildfires. We want to try to help the tribes identify safe buildings that can remain open during outages, which would be like a tribal community center, something that is not going to be in danger, and at the same time also designate those as cooling centers. Again, map regional areas that have a history of fires, apply for shared infrastructure grants, tribal utility scale solar microgrids, and then we are working and coordinating with regional utilities to see about prioritizing tribal facilities during these outages.
And then Aaron, from here, I'll go ahead and share the next couple, or you can share the next couple of screens, but I'll talk about them. So we just wanted to add a couple additional resources that not only the state uses, but other jurisdictions use on local levels as well. And one of them that is called Perimeter Map. So when you guys get these slides, there's a clickable website link. There's also a QR code, so whatever one is more accessible for you to share or for you to use. And so some of these mapping tools, it's a little hard to see here, but since I'm not share screening, I had a couple tabs open. But what it does is allows you to get these updates for evacuations or where cooling stations are at. There's a number of key points where you can check routes, as well as if there was fire or flooding. So this is a great a tool that we use all the time when we're dealing with incidences. So Erin, if you want to click to the next one. As well as we use Watch Duty quite a bit. And although the top of the resource says Watch Duty, it should say Zoom Earth, but the link is accurate as well as the QR code. And so as you can see here on this map, like the whole Western region is very hot. Looks like almost like it's on fire, but like it is definitely showing some points at where, you know, Las Vegas is currently at like 113. So it's just overall, you can look throughout the nation and actually through the whole world, and you can look at a number of different things, whether that's hurricanes, fires. It'll also tell you temperatures. Next one. And then here's the Watch Duty that we were also navigating. So you'll see here there's a number of fires all throughout, even around Nevada, all the bordering areas, as well as you can see this little red marking. That's one of those red flags that Erin had mentioned earlier for the mapping on that back end right there throughout the states. So again, just another great tool and these are all able to be used on computers as well as your phone. And so you're able to map out whatever location that you're currently in throughout the region, or if you were to travel, you can see what type of weather you're navigating in with wherever you're traveling. Next year. And I would just like to say before Erin comes off mute that we just really appreciate the opportunity to share new resources. I know there's a handful of questions, and so whatever needs to be done, there's our contact, there's our work cells, and our emails and our website. So whatever you guys need from us, let us know and we'll help you navigate.
Thank you guys for your time. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you so much, Kimberly and Erin, for providing that helpful overview. We appreciate your time and insights. Next, we're going to move on to Walker Wieland, the manager of the Cal Heat Score program at the California Environmental Protection Agency. So Walker, feel free to take it away.
All right. Thank you, Paige. Hello, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. There we go. Great. My pleasure to be with you all today. My name is Walker Wieland, and I'm the program manager of the Cal Heat Score program at the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment. That's part of California Environmental Protection Agency. Enjoyed the presentations from our neighbors to the east in Nevada. I'm going to talk about a California specific tool that looks at extreme heat called Cal Heat Score. Folks before me and probably throughout this webinar series, you've gotten sort of some real useful information on the significance of extreme heat and being a deadly climate hazard. So I'm not going to harp too much on this point. So I'm just going to go ahead to the next slide. One of the real dangers of extreme heat is that folks, might feel like they're acclimated to it, or they might just have to trudge on with their day. No matter what, they still have work or things that they need to do, even when it is sort of hotter than it has been before, or this duration of heat may be unprecedented, and so on and so forth. Extreme heat really does lead to lots of excess morbidities, which means getting sick from extreme heat, or mortality. There's also not at a statewide level coordinated resources to sort of give people the messages that they need, no matter where they are in the state, the resources they might need as it relates to extreme heat, and sort of what they can do to protect themselves. So Cal Heat Score is really a a tool that's used that should be used in the planning and preparedness, as well as the response phase for extreme heat. Cal Heat Score is a mapping tool, and it provides at every zip code throughout California heat warnings and heat rankings. One way to think about it is just like existing hurricane or tropical storms have this scale from 0 to 5 based on the storm. If you know it's a higher category, like a category 4 or 5, you know it's going to be a really significant event, and you know you need to take action, and it really sort of makes you aware of the significance of the event, maybe from a health perspective, or certainly from an infrastructure or other safety perspective. And so that's what Cal Heat Score does, is it looks at heat events today and in the coming 7 days, and it basically ranks them in terms of their severity and their potential impacts to people's health. These rankings are localized, so we take into account the average temperatures and climate conditions that we see all throughout California, whether you're up in the Clear Lake community or in Oakland, Sacramento, if you're out in the Inland Empire, if you're in Imperial County, if you're in San Diego County, so on and so forth. It looks at what average conditions are like, and also takes into account how many people got sick and went to the hospital from extreme heat during those conditions. And that's what really makes Cal Heat Score more of a unique tool, in that it takes into account not only what heat conditions are like in your community and how irregular or how extreme the coming heat is expected to be, but also there's a real health aspect to it too, where we are saying with increased Cal Heat Score rankings, there's really this increased risk of people getting sick and going to the hospital, and maybe even dying from extreme heat in some cases. So Cal Heat Score is not only designed to be a tool that communicates risks of extreme heat throughout the state, but also is designed to connect communities and tribes to particularly to locally relevant resources on the map. So we're doing some cool center mapping that I'll show you in my demo with Cal Heat Score, but really it's just the beginning of our journey with our tool in building out more comprehensive and robust resources for communities based on their input. Cal Heat Score is built with this climate data that helps us characterize what average heat conditions look like, but also forecast data from the National Weather Service and NOAA that allow us to get a sense of what coming weather conditions are expected to be. But really the unique part of Cal Heat Score is this emergency department data that we have at a state level, where in this case, we're focused on the more acute impacts of extreme heat, such as heat illness, heat stroke, dehydration, and kidney failure. And so this is factored directly into the Cal Heat Score rankings, as I was mentioning. This example chart here, you can think of it as a single zip code. I'm looking at the bottom axis here on apparent temperature, and it's probably a place that is of moderate climate. Maybe it's a place on the coast, right? The coast of California. So what we've been able to look at with our emergency department data and our historical temperature data is form this relationship of, as we have increasing temperatures, what are the increased risks that more and more people are going to go to the hospital from heat? So just to kind of lay it out for you, in this example zip code at 86 degrees are kind of typical conditions, but once we get up to about 94, we see a 33% increase in emergency department visitation rates. At about 98, 67% increase, and then at 102 degrees, 100% or higher, basically double the amount of people going into the hospital for heat. We produce these kinds of graphs for every different zip code in the state. So if you're in a hotter climate, for example, whereabouts the Morongo tribe is in California, really we would start to see these increasing ranks at much higher temperatures. We might not see a Cal Heat Score rank of 1 until maybe 98 degrees and so on. And maybe we might not hit a 4 until we hit 113 degrees, because that really represents what average heat conditions are in that place. So in the same example, just referencing our coastal zip code that I provided as an example here, if the forecasted temperature were 100 degrees, we would reference our chart here on the side and rank it as a Cal Heat Score ranking of 3. So a quick demo to show you what this looks like. Just going to go ahead and pull up the map very quickly. I know I was talking about a coastal zip code, but I'll go ahead and give an example from sort of a series of communities or zip codes just west of Reading. So really between Reading and Eureka here in this more mountainous area. So it's really hot today on the Cal Heat Score map for these particular areas. And they've been rated as a Cal Heat Score ranking of 4, the highest ranking on the map as a result. So you can click on any individual zip code. I'm focusing on this one here right now. And so it shows that the temperature is forecasted to be 99 today. It's looking like it will not break the all-time high of 104, but it is higher than the average temperature of 94. Also on this map, we produce these profiles that show what the age or race or ethnicity breakdown is of people in the zip code, as well as some additional factors that could be relevant as it relates to extreme heat vulnerability. So we're showing those that lack health insurance, those who are outdoor workers, and those who may be linguistically isolated, meaning that English is not their first language. Another resource that I want to direct your attention towards is that this tab on the map shows cool centers. You can see that we have not mapped out cool centers for this part of California very much. So I'm going to just go ahead and go a little bit to the south if my map lets me. Maybe it won't, just because the screen share is kind of... Maybe it'll do it. Let's see. I'll just try to click on a cool center. So these blue triangles on the map show cool centers that we've been able to produce for Cal Heat Score. In this case, we're just linking into existing data services that are provided by cities or counties throughout the state. So we're not maintaining this data. This is really data that is owned by local jurisdictions. This, of course, is so important as cool centers, may be turned on or off or may have varying information associated with them. But that's the basic idea, is that we're trying to not only communicate risk with Cal Heat Score, but also show resources relevant to communities. Really want to emphasize to you all that this map is, I'm very transparent about this map being incomplete, in that we want to continue to engage with communities, tribes, local governments, and others about how we can continue to fill out this map. Maybe not just with cool centers, maybe there's other kinds of data related to extreme heat mitigation in your community that you want to see. And we really want to have those conversations with Californians. So coming back over to my slides, just a quick example here. When you look at Clear Lake, the Clear Lake region in California, this just shows a week where they had a spike in extreme heat. So just to emphasize, Cal Heat Score updates every 24 hours for all zip codes across the state. And you can look at what today's conditions are as well as the coming 7 days. So you can see that they really experienced a spike around the beginning of June. And this is just kind of a case study, right? An example of how you could look at some of the zip codes in the Clear Lake region, and these darker shades represent higher Cal Heat Score rankings, right? But then you could overlay that with some other information. And in this case, we're just showing an example of overlaying it with the percentage of older adults in these communities. So this is very important from a decision maker's perspective, to be able to not only understand measures of extreme heat severity, but also other vulnerability factors that might be important. I just draw your attention to this zip code maybe being one that on this day, might be really important to look at. It's got a very high Cal Heat Score ranking, and about 30% of the people living here over the age of 65. So we think that the number and type of users are really varied and vast throughout California for Cal Heat Score. It can be used as a resource for local governments, for extreme heat planning and response. We think that community-based organizations and also tribes could use Cal Heat Score data to basically advocate for their community, to be able to advocate for resources related to extreme heat, resilience, and or infrastructure. Also, individuals can use Cal Heat Score to just make decisions about their daily activities and get a sense of what heat risks are. And you see here a couple of other examples of different uses for the tool. So we launched the tool at the beginning of this year, and so it's very much a new tool. And now that we've launched it, really our focus is this summer is having different kinds of engagement activities with Californians far and wide about how we can make the tool better. So a couple of examples here on the screen that we're working with and starting to work on, but really want to draw especially the folks on this webinar's attention to these cohorts that we're building out. You can think of these as sort of like ongoing discussions throughout the rest of the summer and into the fall on extreme heat issues, how to make Cal Heat Score more accurate, how to make it more useful. And we have a tribes and Indigenous people cohort in particular that we're recruiting for, as well as outdoor workers, warehouse workers, and older adults. So if you're interested in learning more about this, we actually have a webinar happening tomorrow that's basically more information on the time commitment, what sort of topics we're going to cover, and the compensation that we can offer for cohort participants to be involved in this. If you want to be added to this webinar, please email us, and I'll make sure that you get the Zoom registration link. So the email, our email is right here. I'll also have it on the very last slide. So yeah, here's a little bit more information, right? This is really to create a space for experts to talk to us about heat and how we can make this tool better. So what are we doing in the future? We've got a series of engagement activities happening all throughout the rest of this summer. We've got these cohort activities happening throughout the rest of the year. All of this input that we're going to be getting on Cal Heat Score really contributes to our ongoing research and development on making this a more accurate and useful tool, a tool that people want to keep coming back to. You know, that's really important to us. And we'll be updating the tool continuously, but you can kind of think of this as there will always be improved versions of the tool that we're coming out with. Some examples of research areas that we're thinking about, and also some suggestions we've already got early on in our engagement process, right? So we're beginning to kind of put together what a mobile app could look like for Cal Heat Score, so that people can sort of get notifications on extreme heat days, and also set their profiles and really get more targeted messaging on certain risk factors. We're interested in expanding how we're currently measuring heat, basically getting better resolution data for heat, but also the health response side, right? Like, how do we take into account mortality data? How do we take into account community clinic data, right? Maybe not just emergency room data. More information on demographics, of course, more Cool Center and other mapping that we're interested in, as well as making the tool available in a range of languages. It's available in Spanish and English right now, but we're interested in translating it more beyond that. And if this is intriguing to you and you want to get more involved in our process, please join our listserv at our website right there. Register for our upcoming webinars. We've got one tomorrow. We actually have another one next week that's a different topic. So we've got more content on this that we're really excited to share out with you all. And please email us with comments or questions that you have right there. And please use the tool and let us know what you think about it. We really cannot make this a better and more usable tool without hearing input from tribes, community members, local governments, and researchers and others in this space. So that's all for my presentation, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Walker, for providing that helpful overview. For the sake of time, we'll jump right into the Q&A portion of today's session. So please feel free to put your questions in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand to go off mute.
National and tribal efforts to reduce impacts of extreme heat in California. Paige and I helped pretty heavily on round one applications with quite a few organizations across the state last year. So we're pretty familiar on kind of the program guidelines. We're not anticipating much change to them, but we do have our finger on the pulse for when this is released. So this is something anyone in here is interested in, wants more information, or any technical assistance that Paige kind of overviewed at the beginning of this event, please feel free to reach out to us and we can work with you on that. And then I'll pass it back over to you, Paige, for some resource sharing and close out.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. As Lauren said, we just wanted to close out as we come to the end, highlight some resources. So for additional resources related to community health and well-being, you can check out the CJ Community Hub. This includes recorded webinars and trainings. We'll be putting this one up there as well. Quick guides, a discussion board, and a lot more. So you can scan that QR code, or we'll put some links in the chat as well. Also, if you want to find other grants related to your work, you can check out our Climate Action Grants dashboard. It'll allow you to filter open grant opportunities based off of a variety of focus areas. So that's going to be the QR code in the middle. And lastly, CNNCTS also has a newsletter that you can subscribe to, as Sergio mentioned earlier. And it'll, keep you up to date on what's going on CNNCTS. And it also does include a section on grant opportunities to track. So we'll often highlight live grant opportunities there as well. Next slide. And so yeah, with that, if you want to watch the recordings from the 2 previous installments of this series, you can do so by scanning these QR codes on the side or visiting the CNNCTS YouTube channel. We'll put those links in the chat. Each installment also comes with a PDF resource handout that covers the themes, content, and resources highlighted in each of these sessions. So we'll be sharing out the links in the chat for that. And following up on that, keep an eye out on your email inbox, because we'll be sending out an email with the recording of this session along with the resource handout that we'll put together for this. And with that, we'd like to thank all the panelists for joining us today and sharing their insights, and also thank all of you for joining us for our final installment of the Extreme Heat Adaptation and Indigenous Communities series. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions, but we appreciate your time.
Thanks, everyone. We'll stay on for a little bit in case folks have any more questions.